Jesus in his bedroom. During this visitation, Brian says that Jesus commissioned him to author a new translation of the Bible, one that's more efficient and better translated.
Jesus Christ came into my room. He breathed on me, and he commissioned me. The Spirit of the Lord came upon me. I told you I had a visitation from the one I love. He walked through my wall and breathed on me and released me to do this translation project.
Brian claims that Jesus gave him divine revelation by breathing on him, and despite having no prior linguistic experience, he would now possess the secret knowledge concerning the original languages of the Bible. Brian says it was like he received a chip into his head, and immediately downloads just came to him. Yep. You heard that right. The God of the universe visited a man named Brian while he was probably relaxing in his footy pajamas watching reruns of Everybody Loves Raymond, and while no one else was looking, God told him to fix the Bible and then uploaded stuff to his brain. He actually said that God touched his head and supernaturally expanded the capacity of his brain, and then confirmed it with a top brain mapping scientist.
He came again, it was in a dream, came and touched my forehead right here and said, I'm increasing your capacity to know me. And then I woke up. The top brain mapping person in the world. I asked her, if God touched you right here at hairline, right there, what would that do to your brain? And she said, yo, you don't understand. It would enlarge the capacity.
On an unrelated note, I'd highly recommend getting a carbon monoxide tester. It just sounds like a good idea, so I'll leave a link in the description. Anyway, at some point in time, Brian also saw an angel and was told by God that its name was Passion, which sounds more like a nightclub dancer to me, but who am I to judge? According to an interview he did with Sid Roth, this is where he got the name for his new Bible.
The Passion Translation.
For anyone who doesn't speak another language, you've got to try Duolingo. Did you know more than half the world's population speaks?
Now, the problem isn't those stand about 8 mainline Protestant translations, all of which are great but have ultimately been translated by giant teams of linguistic and biblical scholars who genuinely study the original manuscripts to bring about the most accurate translation possible. Like, these guys truly know what they're talking about. And even though we've reached the pinnacle of biblical accuracy since probably, I don't know, the year 1611, there seems to be a common denominator among weird cult guys messing with the Bible. They all tend to have the same origin story. Visited by God, given a mission to fix the Bible, claim to have secret knowledge, and assert that all previous academic work is dog water. You get the idea. Now, whether it's Joseph Smith with the Book of Mormon or Charles Taze Russell with the New World Translation, Brian Simmons and the Passion Translation seem to be no different. One lone wolf with outrageous claims and no credentials meddling with the sacred word of God. Like, literally, these guys are the same person. While there are a number of legitimate translations, they all fall under the same spectrum in terms of their goals. Let me show you what I mean. And fair warning, it's about to get nerdy. Each legitimate translation falls under one of 3 categories: word for word, thought for thought, and paraphrase. On the word for word side, you have translations like the KJV, NASB, and the ESV. These translations aim to stay as close as possible to the original word for word translation, but sometimes the meaning can get lost in translation, especially for people who have lower reading comprehension or people who just don't understand the cultural context. Now, somewhere in the middle, you have this thought for thought translation, which includes guys like the NIV, the NLT, and the CSB. These translations focus on nailing down the meaning and the intent of the original text, so sometimes they'll rephrase things to make it seem a little bit more understandable for modern readers. Now, on the very right side of the spectrum, you have paraphrases, and this is where the Message Bible comes in. Imagine if your friend read the NIV and then told you about it in his own words. It's not a translation, and it's not meant to be studied. It's simply meant for casual reading, oftentimes helpful for new believers just getting their feet wet. Now, if you take these categories into consideration, the Passion Translation would fall all the way to the far right beyond the paraphrase section into something that is called sectarian translations, among the likes of the New World Translation and the Joseph Smith Translation. The Google search AI thing defines sectarian as a preference for a specific truth or a perversion of one, and that works perfectly here. But the problem is, Brian Simmons and Broad Street Publishing label it as a dynamic equivalence or a thought for thought. However, we can tell that they are full of doo-doo just by reading the Passion Translation along any other dynamic equivalence. For example, let's compare the Passion Translation to the New Living Translation by reading Song of Solomon, chapter 4, verse 4. The New Living Translation says, "Your neck is as beautiful as the Tower of David, jeweled with the shields of 1,000 heroes." The Passion Translation says, "When I look at you, I see your inner strength, so stately and strong. You are as secure as David's fortress. Your virtues and grace cause 1,000 famous soldiers to surrender to your beauty." What? First, the Passion Translation doesn't even remotely resemble any other translation, and you put the words of King Solomon in red as if it were Jesus speaking. Even if these were allegorical to Jesus and the church, you still took it upon yourself to present them as words Jesus literally spoke. Not only are the words wildly different, there's a lot more of them too. The NLT is simply 17 words long, while the Passion Translation is double the length at a whopping 35 words long. To put this into perspective, imagine if you were speaking to someone using a translator. You get up and say, "Hi, I'm Dizzy," and then the translator randomly goes on to this giant monologue where he appears to be telling his life story. You'd rightfully suspect that the translator is not saying what you're saying. Look how the Passion Translation has 2,919 total words, while the ESV has 1,932. That's 51% more words. And it's not just regular words, but weird hyper-charismatic words that aren't really in the Bible anyways. Words like realm, which is used approximately 0 times in the ESV, while the Passion Translation uses it, drumroll please, 196 times. Ironically, I have no words to explain how ridiculous this is. All 6 of my brain cells lack the energy needed to conjure up a statement